If I would ask to...
PaER meeting, April 22nd.
Oh, are we having a meeting? This is not an official meeting. I'm willing to talk. And I'd like to, the point...
Or Steve, whichever it's easier for you.
We don't have an agenda today, or the guy who usually facilitates for us is not here. So usually we've been working on, basically we've been focusing on one specific project recently, point of process.
Yes, we need a note taker and maybe a timekeeper.
Okay, 1 second.
Yeah.
So we've been working on a number of things. Well, we've been working on a number of things. Among them are the voting experiment. So things that should be on the agenda are report backs on the voting experiment. Any other topics, agenda submissions, or
I hate to sound like a broken record, but we do have a problem of internal communication between meetings. Mm-hmm. And I'll describe why.
Is that something you want to put on the agenda?
Yes.
Then let's put it on the agenda.
Internal communication.
Anything else for agenda items?
Discuss when we should actually meet to actually conduct the experiment, not to plan out a day, at least, either or an event.
I have an agenda item.
Okay.
Going forward, looking forward.
Looking forward.
Just looking forward in terms of beyond the voting experiment.
Okay. Anything else? Well, for the two new folks, I guess I'll just say what we've been up to.
Do you want to join us?
Yeah, I'm thinking of sit and listen to you guys.
We have a seat here.
Well,
You can have a
welcome to
chair.
sit and
You're free
listen.
to leave.
Yeah.
I mean, we are not going to hold you to it.
Group's been active since I guess the second week of the occupation last summer. We developed a proposal, which was like a lengthy proposal for recommendations for electoral reform inside the group. I don't know if there's any copies. I have copies in my other bag. I don't have
Of the
any
what?
Of the
People power.
people before parties.
I
document.
probably have it.
Oh, you do? Okay. So that was like a major thing we worked on, and on the top of that list, which was actually just random that it was at the top of the list, was alternative voting methods. So we also developed an experiment to actually test alternative voting methods against our present voting system. And then one of the subgroups of our group has gotten pretty big over the last few months, and that's the Get Money Out of Politics group. I don't know if you guys know Jared, or maybe you've been involved.
So that's
with
a
those.
separate group from you guys?
That was started as a subgroup of this group.
A subgroup.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's the mission of this group?
What is our mission
Like as
statement?
opposed to getting money out of politics?
We're more focused on electoral reform. Right?
Okay, so how people actually go in and vote?
Right.
Yeah, like things relating to the voting system, the party system. Let's see, on the People Before Parties document, it talks about alternative voting methods, proportional representation. What else is on there? Like things like term limits. You know, these kinds of nuts and bolts things about that actually structure our political system. Money. The discussion of money and campaign financing is conspicuously absent from that document. Mainly because people wanted to focus on it separately, so that's why that's why it ended up becoming separate. So that's just a little in terms of background. Okay, so we have 4 agenda items: internal communication, voting experiment, and determining dates for the voting experiment, and what else to do looking forward.
And internal communication.
Internal communication, I said that. So before we move on to any of these agenda items, does anyone have any report backs on anything? Did anyone participate in any Occupy actions in the last week?
I have a sort of a report back of sorts. I saw the Koch brothers Exposed movie in Brooklyn. Strongly recommend everybody to see it. In fact, we're working on getting it's kind of a mini announcement, a screening of it. So stay tuned for information on that. It's low budget. I'm in the business, so I'm very critical of these things. Information-wise, it was very good. Production-wise, it wasn't. But it's valuable in so far as the information that it gives, especially if you're not really aware of what the Koch brothers are up to.
Okay. Anyone else? Did anyone else
Yeah,
participate?
last Saturday, I was in Washington at a conference that was called by Occupy DC that dealt with money out of politics. And
Wait, you went to DC?
yeah, DC, Washington DC, a whole-day conference on Saturday. 4 people from our subgroup of get money out of politics, and corporate personal / and get money out of politics, whatever its name really is, over there, including myself. It was informative. We networked, and there are many things that I can talk about that subject, but that it will be discussed on Wednesday at our meeting over there. So I'm not going to go into all those details because I can go on for all hour on those issues.
Yeah, we know.
Okay. Anyone else? Any events, Occupy-related stuff anyone went to in the last week?
Well, I went to jail on Friday for the sweeping
Oh, yeah.
street action.
Oh, yeah.
But I was realizing as I was lying there and they weren't allowing us to lie on the sidewalk, I was like, I really need to get involved in the electoral reform and money out of politics working group because none of this would be happening if we weren't like considered such a threat for just holding up these little signs.
Right.
So that's how I related back to this.
Yesterday I was uptown at an action up in Harlem that was kind of a coalition of community organizations, and there was a few Occupy folks there as well for like anti-police brutality, Trayvon Martin, solidarity march kind of thing. Your friends in the Revolutionary Communist Party were there. I say that sarcastically. But it was good. It was a spirited crowd, and it seems like there were some cop watch people there. It seems like they've got there's some good organizing going on up in Harlem. Hopefully it'll get bigger. So that was interesting yesterday.
Were there LaRouchites there?
There were no LaRouchians there now. No, there were people from the party people that were there. There were some people from the Revolutionary Communist Party, a couple people from the Freedom Party, and then some like Obama Democrats.
Was Nellie Bailey and Occupy Harlem there?
I'm not sure who that is. Who's that?
Okay, you don't know.
Yeah.
Who was the main sponsor of the event? Or what was the
that?
name event? What was the event called?
I don't even remember. I mean, I saw it was on the Occupy. It was on the NYCGA calendar. I forget what it was like. I think it was just called "Stop Police Brutality" or something like that. It was organized by a coalition of community groups up in Harlem.
Would stop and frisk there?
Sorry?
Stop and frisk.
Yeah,
Who keeps our record?
It was an anti-stop and frisk
I'm giving you
rally.
the
It was a big
closest to the
proportion
record
of it, yeah.
that I have.
And I think there's been three actions like that in Harlem in the last 6 months or so. So it was good to see that it's still ongoing. Okay. Anything else in
I
terms
went
of?
to direct action Mayday planning on Sunday, and went to another direct action planning on Tuesday, which ended up being a bust because everybody was at the tax die-in action. So I ended up hearing a teach-in on the $1 trillion student debt and that whole action that's going on.
Well, what's the planning for Mayday look
Yeah,
like?
what came out of the Mayday planning?
Nothing. Like literally nothing came out of the Mayday planning. It was like 4 or 5 hours, and we didn't accomplish anything. But just this week, from watching online and live streams and stuff, I saw a press conference that one of the working groups, the precarious workers group, has officially gotten sanctioned from unions that are going to be there. They can't call for a strike, but they can, ask their members to show up for the protest in March. So it looks like it's going to be a big turnout.
Yeah.
It really does. It's building up that way. But you never know, I guess. I mean, we'll have to see.
What unions, do you know what unions they were talking to?
Oh, shoot. I remember. What was it? restaurant workers was one,
Politics and alcohol.
and I don't know, there were two or three. I know restaurant workers was the only one I can remember.
Okay.
I want to say teachers, but I think that's just because UFT is always in my mind around here, but I don't know.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to say something. You mentioned Trayvon Martin, and did you take note the Zimmerman's apology statement?
I did
It's
see
very
that.
Powerful
Yeah,
words
I did see that.
that will, that will let you know what's going on.
Yeah, people were talking about Zimmerman's statement up at the rally
Yeah,
yesterday.
every
what
word,
did he say?
just make a word within the word, and you will get what it means.
Yeah, he was. I think it was basically just his bond hearing, where he was only supposed to plead, I guess, but he ended up like taking the stand and making a statement, people were like, oh, he apologized to the Martin family or what have you, but it didn't really sound like an apology to me. It was more like, I'm sorry for your loss, rather than I'm sorry I killed that guy.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I killed
shot
your
your son.
son. Yeah. But it was like a lot of the TV news people, they were broadcasting it live or what have you. So yeah, he just made this kind of apologetic statement in court, which was kind of, I don't think that's normal procedure to like make a statement at your bond hearing.
No, it
So,
absolutely is not.
yeah.
A message to the hoodies.
Exactly. Yeah.
He said, I apologize, I'm sorry for your loss, and then he made a point to say, I didn't know whether he was armed or not. So a lot of people are suggesting that it was his lawyer told him to do that as like a strategy, so later
Yeah.
it's going to come up, that's going to be information to be, I don't know.
Yeah. So
And
like
also
setting up
his
his
age.
defense.
Age.
Very important.
Right, yeah.
He said,
it's age.
I didn't know
Yeah.
that he was a little
He was
younger.
a kid.
A little younger.
He said, I thought he was
Make
a little
the
younger
word
than me.
is
Yeah.
Yeah,
so powerful.
yeah, who knows?
Okay. Any other report backs? Any?
Who's
topics?
taking minute?
We have recorded.
Oh, wait.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Just so everyone knows, this is being audio recorded rather than having someone take notes. We just record our meeting. So just want everyone to know in case that makes them uncomfortable, or if they. I mean, we can turn it off, I guess, if someone were to object. But then I would nominate that person to take notes. Right, so beware. All right, so we have four. So normally we could. I mean, I can take stack. We don't really, unless it gets really heated.
Yeah.
Someone else can take stack. So we have four topics. On the agenda: internal communication, voting experiment, when to meet for the experiment stuff, and looking forward. Let's talk about rather than talking about things. Can we?
Let's keep looking forward to the end.
Okay. That's it. It is last. But let's not start by talking about talking, which would be internal communication. Let's start with the voting experiment.
Yeah.
This is actually for the folks who haven't seen it yet. This is we developed an experiment to test alternative voting methods against our traditional voting method. You can take it yourself.
I think I actually took this test
Oh, did
in
you?
Union Square.
Oh, did you?
How often have you been out there in Union Square?
We were just in Union Square once, 2 weeks ago.
Because I hardly ever go there. The one time.
Were you there 2 Saturdays ago?
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
it.
you probably did it then. Okay, well then, that's it.
Yeah, okay.
Well, you can take it again if you want. You want to see it?
Sure.
You can actually take the
Oh, yeah.
test itself.
Just read the instructions and then. Well,
So that's what we've been working on. I think right now we have in the current tally there, I think 56 responses and that's from last Saturday at the
I thought we had
Central
over
Park.
100 combined with the.
No, because the first week we took at Union Square we're still testing, right?
Oh,
you want to go to the whole experiment?
okay.
Separate. You're testing.
So
You're testing different methods against one.
56
around.
actual.
responses, yeah.
We're testing how people vote
Okay.
using different
But
methods.
doing it, I mean, I ended up having some suggestions for it, and I wanted to ask. I had a question, which was, what we need to ask ourselves: what do we want to do? What kind? how do we want to look at this information and what do we want to take out, right? Because there are the various levels of how we can use the data, right? It's like, okay, we can say, what were the most basic thing would be like, how do the outcomes from the various methods differ, right? That's a basic question. You could just say, for instance, right now, under plurality, under our traditional method, the Democrats are winning with the 56 some odd response we have, the Democrats are winning. But under approval, the Greens are winning, and under range, independents are winning. So like with 3 different methods, we have 3 different outcomes. So, I mean, that in and of itself, I guess, shows that the method itself changes the outcome in some way, shape, or form. But there are other things we can ask with the data, right? We can ask more specific, but then this becomes, like, I guess, a programming issue or whatever, trying to graph out the information. Like, how many people, let's say, like in the right now, like right now, under plurality, the Democrats are ahead. But we can ask a question like, of all the people who voted for the Democrats under plurality, did they also rank the Democrats first under instant runoff, or these kinds of, we can ask specific. So that's my question. What other things can we do with the data?
Say that part again, just repeat the.
So for instance, we can say, like, one thing we can do is just compare the outcomes from the various methods.
Right.
But what else can we do with the data that we have? What other
You mean draw
things?
conclusions?
Yeah. What other points of data can we take that we have and draw conclusions? One thing would be to look at, people who voted, whatever people did for, like how many people voted in, let's say, instant runoff. You take instant runoff voting and plurality voting. How many people voted for they voted for the Democrats under plurality? Did they also rate the Democrats number 1 under instant runoff? Right? How many people voted for the Democrats, even though the Democrats under plurality, even though the Democrats were not their favorite party under the other method?
Can I speak to that for a second?
Sure.
I read something very interesting today about the election between Teddy Roosevelt, Wilson, and now I can't remember who the
Is that Taft?
When it was
Taft, yeah.
Taft.
And the interesting outcome was that Wilson won, but both Wilson and Roosevelt came in a close second. But the interesting thing was that both Wilson and Roosevelt were both progressives, because you could be a Republican and be a progressive in the early 1900s.
Yeah,
They weren't mutually exclusive. So so finding out that not just who won, but who came in second, and realizing that both of these men were progressives against everyone else who was like, we want everything to stay the same, was I think, a very important piece of information to know, especially in this current climate. So finding out more data, I'm sort of giving the, a strong yes to let's try to see what other data we can pull.
Okay. Well, that's my question: is what can we look at? That's one thing I came up with. Is just like we can compare individual voters, individual respondents, and then amass that information, in statistical aggregates, right? Like how many people, right?
Yeah.
That's the question then.
First question, technically, would it be possible to have a spreadsheet of the results distributed among us, so each of us can analyze any way we want to analyze? Because until I see the results, I start asking questions, and if it is a spreadsheet, I can run some analysis on it. If it's possible, I'd like that to be done at a certain point, at least for us. Also, there is a lot of historical analysis of what would have happened at certain critical elections, and this happened or that happened, okay? So that in addition to that, we can ask what would have happened when a third-party candidate, significant third-party candidate, not run at a certain election. That's also, we can ask that question. Did the third party candidate spoil it for somebody or not? We have to deal with the spoiler effect. Okay?
Like Nader.
And neither is the most recent one and the most obvious one. But let's take the situation that had Ras Perot not run, okay? When did he run?
96, 92.
And the Republican, he probably was a spoiler for the Republicans.
I think there's good data that shows he drew equally from Democrats and Republicans.
Okay, so I've heard. So, okay.
But yeah, that's a good
I
question.
mean, I've heard the argument Ras Perot spoiled it for the Republicans. You're talking very good data. So when, because when there are third-party candidates, or third and fourth, we can say what if, okay?
Yeah, indeed. What if?
Sorry.
1 second. Your question regarding spreadsheets, that's a question for Stefan. How can we haven't actually done that yet, like, because it says there's a way to email the results from the machine, right? But what is the form that those results are in right now? Because I haven't done it yet.
In a XML type of layout. So we could put it in a spreadsheet, Excel spreadsheet or whatever. Sure.
If it, or in any other format that can be exported to a spreadsheet.
Yeah, we could put it in a spreadsheet.
So we haven't done that yet.
Yeah.
No. Or I haven't tried to yet.
I'm not sure how to formulate this question, but I thought part of the purpose of the experiment was to show partially which one of these methods would deter or prevent a spoiler. I'm not saying
That's
it
one of
right,
the things, yeah.
right? I mean, isn't
Would
that
make
part of what
spoiling
we're going to
irrelevant.
find out from this?
I think
According to some of the things that we've read,
Well, I think,
there
yeah.
are certain methods that will make a spoiler less effective, or not effective at all,
yes.
right?
Yes. Well, I mean, you can see that. Well, I think it's already kind of showing that because people are, the Democrats are winning under our traditional method, so people are voting strategically for Democrats rather than because they're voting. They're not really. I would argue that probably the majority of them are not voting for Democrats. They're just voting against Republicans.
Yeah.
So they're voting. So they end up voting by default for Democrats. But under the other methods, the Democrats aren't winning in any of the other methods. Right. So that shows that
winning.
people are kind of.
You use the word winning. Getting elected.
They're ahead. I'll put it that way.
No. The question is, how do you conclude the other method? For instance, you talked about range voting. Who is getting the most points in range voting?
The Green Party.
That is among occupiers. Okay.
Yeah, this is among occupiers.
Among occupiers, but still.
By and large, I mean, there are some.
Under approval, independent candidates have the most approvals. So, and under IRV, I can't tabulate by hand right now. But top line under IRV, actually the Democrats have our top line
What
candidates
are
under
they
IRV.
again?
Instant runoff.
Oh, in the run, of course. The Democrats would.
But yeah, so it's showing that people are voting strategically under plurality because they're choosing because they're choosing different parties when they have a different method. When they have multiple options, they choose alternatives.
It seems to change the whole psychology. Like just now when I did it, I was like, okay, yeah, well, Democrat, lesser of two evils, boom. But then when I saw like the runoff thing where I can rate them, I just felt empowered. Like, oh wow, like I like socialism. I like, so it's there's the data collection aspect of it, but also like you transform the electorate's psychology. It's going to change. It could change everything around politics.
Sure.
Yeah, true. I mean, that's one of the ideas. One is to collect the data, but also to just introduce people to these alternative methods, right? Because probably, it's just something you do. It's not something you really question. Really, you just maybe take it as like a force of gravity or something.
I forgot. Did we include approval voting among them?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have approval, plurality, range, and rank choice. Yeah, so that's my question. What other pieces of information what other kinds of conclusions can we draw from the information that we are collecting? Also, I was thinking maybe would it be possible to include like three kinds of to get some basic demographic data from people? Would that be asking too much to get like
What's relevant?
Race, age.
that way we can make sure that we can determine whether we have a representative sample of, say, the population, right?
We do occupiers are not a representative sample of the population.
Yes, I know.
Okay.
But we're
And
not
we
only
can-
gonna
And
be-
even statistically, there is no way we can make it more representative. Okay. But at least we tell them.
But we're not only going to be taking this to people at Occupy, right? I mean, that's almost preaching to the choir. We want to introduce, you know, outside.
To a larger population.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what?
But to get to get a scientifically valid sample and to be able to draw valid conclusions off of it, we want to be able to show some way that we have a valid or that we have a representative sample, right?
The classic questions that they all have. Are you registered? How would you define yourself? Democrat, Republican, Independent,
Yeah, party ID.
Other. Those are the, okay. Liberal, conservative, these are very superficial. Okay? Liberal, conservative,
If we're going to go out to the public, we have to ask first if you're American, if you're allowed to vote, because we don't want to start
Oh, yeah.
taking
Are you
the
registered?
temperature of people who are not citizens, who don't have a vested interest in our
allowed
election.
to vote. There are two kinds of
I mean,
people.
everybody has a vested interest in
There
our
are two kinds
elections.
of people who are
but-
who are not allowed to vote. Those people who are not American citizens, and those people who spend time in jail for smoking marijuana or selling marijuana or whatever, which means former felons may not vote. So, so the point is, if you are allowed, okay, I would ask you, are you an American citizen, yes or no? Are you a registered voter, yes or no? These are the questions.
Yeah.
So maybe I don't know if it would be possible. Would it be possible to program it to tack it on so that say people can just have like 4 or 5 simple questions like age range, maybe ethnicity, party ID,
Not
and, like,
ethnicity, race.
or race, whatever the categories are
Okay.
for.
Here we are getting into our own biases as to what's relevant and what's not.
Well, I'm just thinking of what do you usually see in your standard polling or survey,
Yes.
stuff, right? It's like 99% of non-white Hispanics say X or something. I don't know.
Correct.
You have to ask that question. So we could just probably just crib it from whatever some pollster.
That race ethnicity mix, race by itself is not an issue. Or how would you identify
I'll
yourself
let you hear other
ethnic?
people. I mean, sorry. Does
I-
anyone else have a
That's okay.
input about demographics, about what data we should collect, stack?
Yeah, gender, race,
Gender,
age.
of course, gender. Yes.
Oh, I thought you said that.
There's only men here.
I don't know how you want to do like how much money people earn, or maybe you don't
Through
have to,
income.
but that would be interesting.
For sure.
We may-
That's going to be a very tricky question to ask, though, wouldn't it? I mean,
No.
You could say how
ask somebody.
would you
we could say a range, right?
rate
Above or
what's your
below.
income every day?
If you provide ranges, then you have to be rather careful that you provide relevant ranges. I really prefer what's your age, what your adjusted, to the best of your memory, what was the adjusted gross income on your last federal income tax return. I don't care about your name.
No, I'm sorry. I don't like that question. I think it's going to put people off. If somebody came up to me, a complete stranger on the street, and asked me to participate in their experiment, and I would happily do so, and then they said, "How much money do you make?" I'm going, "That's none of your fucking business." I'm sorry. I don't mean to.
Yes, you're
I don't
right.
want to. Yeah, I think it would put people off.
Well, is the purpose a relative comparison between the two voting methods,
More than two.
or the different voting methods?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
I mean, it's just we could collect more Not necessarily, no.
All right. I was just going to say, if it's a relative comparison, then sample is not an issue really, because it's still going to be an equal comparison if you have the same people doing each of the 3 or 4 methods. But if you're also looking to see, I mean, I'm confused as to what the sample is going to provide, what reference the sample will provide.
Having a kind of like a representative sample. You
So
mean?
so you want the representative sample to be statistically nominal to what the public is, or what the normal.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Okay. And that is for what purpose for this analysis?
I guess maybe just like I mean, to give it more
Legitimacy?
legitimacy.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because occupiers are all interested in radical politics,
Right.
so it's going to be.
Well, I mean, that's going to
Occupiers are not
affect
a
the
good sample.
results
That's right.
of the voting, but it's not going to affect the comparative analysis of the vote.
Well, we don't. I guess we won't. Will it?
That's
I don't know.
Okay, I see. Yeah.
We don't. How would we know unless we
wouldn't know.
try?
That's
You
true.
know. Because like it might just be if we're pulling and just say if we're just pulling like occupiers, it might be that occupiers are more open to alternative
Yeah,
parties or
I see.
candidates
Yeah.
than the rest of the public. So maybe they'd be more likely to choose a Green over a Democrat in some other method. But your average person who's not very politically involved might not.
Right.
But who knows? Maybe they'd be more likely because they're not thinking strategically or something. I don't know.
I think 1 out of 20 or 1 out of 30 people walking on the street would choose a Green over a Democrat. 1 out of 10. I don't care, but something like that. The question is 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 30. That's a good question.
Yeah. But I think maybe we can tack on like the demographic questions as like it only takes whatever, like 90 seconds to go through this thing. So maybe at the end of that we could just be like make it optional.
Right.
Would you like to give us some more data, like to help with our results? Like
And you don't have to answer all of them.
Exactly. Just answer like
You're not gonna
answer
answer,
5
skip.
Demographic questions.
And you know what
If
might
you-
be a
if you
better
want.
idea is rather than ask them verbally, hand them a piece of paper so that they can answer silently. They might be more likely to, for example, if you're going to ask somebody
We're gonna
their race or whatever, there might be more whatever the question is. I think people are going to be more likely to answer the question if they can just check it off and then hand you a piece of paper that you're never going to know was them. Do you know what I'm saying?
no.
That
Wait,
it's going to be.
I think did you have a
well,
response to that?
we could program that in. We could create another interface for those questions. I get.
Okay.
So then
Sorry.
they can,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
And then we'll attach that to the voter ID that we assign to them without attaching a name. It'll be anonymous.
Right. It's still anonymous. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I know what we would want, if at all, to correlate voting behavior with demographic, just to know the demographics of the people who participated is not so much an issue. For instance, there are 2 ways of doing age. What year were you born in? Bingo. Just write a number. The program will figure out how to divide it. And how would you define yourself ethnically and or racially? Okay? How would you define? And then we would figure out how to bunch those things into relevant
Categories, yeah.
categories.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of think like the demographic information shouldn't be optional, except for maybe like if the income question would make people uncomfortable. Because I think most people are used to being asked a million times a day, "What gender are you? What race are you?" I mean, I don't think that question's going to put people off, and I think the findings could be really interesting and valuable. And I mean, maybe the income question is more touchy for people. So you could make that one optional, but it just seems a shame to just throw the baby away with the bathwater.
So do we ignore the data if they choose to opt out of the demographic question? Do we eliminate that? I mean, how do we? I would need to program that. So do we ignore the data if they have to answer the demographic part, right? And do we ignore their other votes?
A mandatory part of the survey.
Mandatory. And then
Yeah.
if they don't answer, then we
And
scrap
if they
it.
do, because I think most people will just,
Yeah, we
I
throw
don't
away
think
the
that will
data.
put most people off.
Yeah. And in fact, actually, now that you mention that, I think being that it's going to be anonymous and being that it's not going to be a because I was thinking about the verbal aspect of it and making somebody speak out loud how much money
much
they
you make? No.
Yeah, if you give them a multiple choice in the system, and then they're probably not going to be as put off by the question if they can answer it anonymously. So
If it's anonymous, it won't be put
yeah,
people off.
yeah. I think I agree with that.
On the issue of income, there is a surrogate for income which is not great, and that is class. How would you define yourself from among the following? You give them about 5 class questions, income-wise or class. Upper class, upper middle class, lower middle class, working poor, whatever,
Rather than a
or
number.
other. You're given
Or
those
different.
choices, whatever, and they would, to the best of your ability. Okay. We're not perfect. Yeah.
Well, but I think that, just from the sociology class I took, like people hardly ever consider themselves whatever they are compared to
20% think there's a
So, like,
1%.
for instance, like people who are working class much prefer to think of themselves as middle class,
Correct.
or so I think that maybe actually the number bracket might be more accurate.
Right.
Yeah, I would love
And
to
people
have.
might still
I would
lie,
love to have their
like,
income,
Yeah.
but
Right.
Actually, I have a point of information on that. I saw
Yeah.
about 10 years ago, there was this actually relates to, I guess, Occupy rhetoric. 10 years ago, there was a study, and and one of the questions it asked is like what percentile of the population do you belong to? And 20% of people thought that they were of the 1%.
Yeah.
20% of people thought that
Yeah.
they were 1%ers.
That's so interesting. And then the other thing I've heard is that a lot of people who are wealthy consider themselves
Self-
upper middle class.
Right.
So I think
so
I think
a
it's
lot of
just
false
like
consciousness.
it's
Yeah.
fascinating how people perceive themselves.
I don't make that much money, $250,000.
An hour.
how much?
I'm not rich.
In Manhattan,
I'm
you're poor.
not. I'm not rich. I'm only making $250,000 a year.
An hour.
Say it is. It's relative.
By the way, whenever I discover that I'm somewhere around the national median, I say to myself, but I'm struggling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got some. So we have.
And they
So
stay in the
for,
Starbucks with a
so for potential demographic questions to summarize, we have party ID, ideological ID. So party ID would be Democrat, Republican, Independent, etc. Ideology would be conservative, liberal, moderate, progressive, libertarian, etc. Age, race, registration status, gender, maybe income. So that's actually that's 7 questions already. So that might be I'm not sure if I would agree that it should be mandatory. I don't think we should scrap the data if they choose not to do it.
You can just put it in third classification so you can use the data
Yeah.
at some point.
becomes harder for me.
Yeah, so this is a question for
volunteering
Stefan
for
because
more work.
he has done all the legwork of programming everything. So the more things we come up with, the more work we are creating for Stefan.
Yay!
In many of those cases that we do in the rest of it, among the choices there should be other, okay?
Yeah.
Because in New York State at least, okay, there are several other genuine registered parties
of
that
course.
people can identify themselves.
Okay, and one more thing. Any other points on that? Maybe we should move on. One more thing. I think I mentioned this to Stefan last week is that the way it's set up right now is that everyone who takes the experiment does plurality, and then they do 2 out of the remaining 3 methods. So each person does 3, which means that if we have a sample of 99 people, we're going to get 99 responses on plurality, but we're only going to get 66 responses on each of the other 3. Right?
Right.
So in a way, we're privileging plurality.
But it is the default. We have to compare the default. The problem is not what is the perfect system.
Exactly.
How does the current default react to compared to any of the alternatives?
But the reasoning behind us originally doing it this way was because it would take too long and people weren't interested. and people would lose interest, and it would take too long to do it. But actually doing it, it only takes like 90 seconds to do right now, and people are done, and they're like, oh, it's over already. I was just starting to have a good time. Almost.
Right.
So I don't think
That was unexpected.
yeah, that was unexpected. So I don't think that's necessarily a sound methodological reason to strike to do this randomization thing. I think you could also do it a different way, like everyone just does all four, and they're random, and all four of them are randomized or something. I just don't think that's a sound methodological reason.
But I mean the order.
Yeah, because right now,
If it's doable to add in the fourth, Stefan, if it's doable and not, going to cost you the next 40 hours of your life, I think it might give our critics less ammunition to say that the experiment wasn't, what's the word I'm looking for?
It was flawed.
Valuable because we're not, you know what I'm saying? It's gonna give our critics less ability to say that the experiment's flawed.
so that was just something I was thinking, and because if the original reason to not test all four of them was it would take too long, but it's not taking, so that was just it's not actually taking too long. So
I remember when I took it, I was like, this is so short.
yeah, right.
That
It
was
goes
my
by very
impression
quickly.
as I walked away. I mean,
This is social.
sorry?
Social, is that?
So short.
Oh, so
Short.
short.
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
social.
Right, it's quick,
Yeah.
right? A lot of people have that response. They're like, oh, it's over.
I mean, I could have easily filled
They-
out a couple more without getting pissed off.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
By the way, if people drop off at any point because it's randomized, then we get one set, two sets, three sets, and then the fourth one they got pissed off and walked away. So at least we got the first few.
exactly.
Now, do we? Sorry. Right. Do we randomize the other methods? So plurality will always be the first one, right? Or do we randomize the other methods, or do we?
I think I would say
As far as the appearance, the way they appear.
Should we randomize? No. Should plurality be randomized too or not? I don't know why. No.
I'm not sure either.
Wait, what?
Right now it's set up so everyone does plurality first, and then it's a random, and then there's a randomly generates the next two out of the remaining three.
If we bring in the fourth, there's probably no reason to have the plurality as an
Number one.
automatic number one, because now we've equaled out the. I'm not an expert on this, but that would be my right.
No, of course, yeah, because
Does that make sense?
Just randomize all four of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not an expert, but what I remember
of us
from
are.
my talk,
maybe
the
next-
moment I did the first, that already biased what I did the following. I already set my mind. I have to be consistent with what I set in cement. So I would rather that people not be biased by the mentality of plurality coming first. At least for me.
Anyone else have ideas?
The only thing is
Randomization?
that it sets the stage because that's everybody know because that's how we vote. I don't know. It might. I don't know. I'm just voicing a. If you start out with something that's a voting method that's alien to people, I don't know. It might be a little weird. I don't know. Never mind.
No. I think that's a good point. I see both because I see both sides, or I see both of these points. Like on the one hand, I think it's plurality coming first. It's like we are literally privileging plurality, even though our hypothesis is to question it, right? Because we're
Right.
kind of undercutting our own actions that way. But on the other hand, putting plurality first, like, eases people into it, right? And the point, what we want to do is introduce people to new methods, right?
Right.
That's also a big part of it. So start off with what they're familiar with what they know, and then suddenly they're
Because
confronted with something new, and they're like, oh, that's interesting.
My
right?
reasoning would be is if it's without any introduction, you're handed this thing and it says, if the election were held today, how would you vote? And suddenly I'm given range voting, and it's like, but that's not how we vote. It would be confusing without a preamble into it, right?
Yeah.
But people know this is about voting methods. So, I mean, they're expecting something more different. I personally think that we should, I guess, randomize it. Is that the word?
Yeah.
Because I don't think people will be so uncomfortable by the. I hear what you're saying about how it would be unfamiliar, but I think that if the whole theme of the thing is voting methods, then people will.
And certainly if the lesser of two evils is going to be getting an accuracy in terms of if the randomness of it is going to give us a better outcome, then then it's going to be less deleterious than putting plurality first. Then let's make it random.
Okay.
Zach.
Assuming we had 100,000 votes in all kind of mixes, and I had a good computer and good computer programming and so forth, I would then run a certain test. Does the order bias a subsequent decision? Similarly, if I do instant runoff voting, which is the nearest thing, and I pick the green first, and two later I have plurality, damn it, I voted for that green. I voted for him. I'm not going to whistle out.
Yeah.
That may be the mentality or may not be the mentality. But if I do plurality first, yay, I'm for the green. He's going to lose anyway. But I'm going to vote my conscience, and I understand it. So I'm not sure. Okay.
Okay. So these are the suggestions coming up. Obviously, does anyone happen to know any statisticians or
No.
professional sociologists? All right.
I mean, I can ask around,
Yeah.
but none off the top of my head.
Okay. Because any of it we could.
Ask around, nobody.
Question. I would like to, again, I have not been involved, to go to the next American Political Science Association and somehow even do it in a hallway and ask people, please remark, or even do a workshop and say, hey, this is what we have done. We are not professional. We are well-meaning. Let's have your critique. And if not, the American Political Science Association, we may find equivalent forms to do it in. We should follow and find out where they are.
Okay. Okay. So, all right, we've already spent significant time on this. So that's a lot of stuff. So I guess we can keep mulling this over a little bit, and I think we should just keep moving forward with the way it is, and then over the next couple of weeks, decide how we want to decide for sure how we want to change things on the basis of these ideas, and move forward with that.
But if we change it midstream, it's not going to, the data that we've already collected will be compromised, right?
Well, we could just say this was the collection. This was the data we collected under the first
Parameters.
under the first system, right? Version 1.0, right?
Okay.
And then we'll have version 1.5 or
Okay.
2.0,
Okay.
and we'll say under one. And then actually we could say we might actually show that look when we did it the first time when plurality came first, we could actually ask the question: did plurality bias people's choices?
Yeah.
Right? If we say in the second version, if everything's randomized, we can compare that with the non-randomized one and see if it was different. So that might actually give us some more data points. Okay, so keep these notes. Related to this, to decide, we wanted to Stefan's agenda item to decide when to do the next date. Anyone know of any when to go around? Like the town square events were really good for this to get. Is there another one of those coming up?
It hasn't been planned yet, right? I haven't seen anything.
I mean, May Day is an obvious choice.
I don't know about May.
Wednesday's a big, the 1T march on Wednesday.
This Wednesday?
Yeah.
What's happening on Wednesday?
The $1 trillion student debt march. It's at. It is.
Is this an Occupy event?
Yeah.
That'll be good. Wednesday.
No, that's for May.
Is
Bryant
it on
Park.
the NYCGA agenda?
Yeah. Bryant Park. No, Union Square. 10, 10 to 1 at Bryant Park, and then at Union Square too. It's
It's
Sure,
during the day.
online.
yeah, it's online. I don't.
It's during the day, though.
Yeah. No, at 4 Union Square. You know what? I've got like so
Afternoon.
many times and stuff in my
Okay,
head.
sure.
I can't.
So
But
sometime.
it's definitely Wednesday.
Definitely Wednesday. I know
Okay.
that part's right.
These guys, when there's food, man, they are
Forget
hungry,
about it,
hungry.
right?
So I mean, the question is, so I've been home. I've been in possession of the iPad since since the town square. I was going to go out and do it and try and get some more respondents yesterday uptown, but it wasn't an ideal situation just because there weren't that many people, and the people who there were actually listening intently to the speakers on the stage. So I didn't want to just be going around bothering people and talking over, and shouting over the speakers. So I didn't actually collect any more. But I think May Day will be a good day because there'll be a lot of people out, and there'll probably be a lot of downtime if we get there early.
Yeah.
But we could say tentatively for Wednesday. I mean, it depends. Wednesday afternoon.
Yeah, it depends on availability.
I could join you on Wednesday, I think.
I could probably do Wednesday afternoon.
What
Okay,
did she
so
I
we'll
mean,
talk.
there's also an ACT UP march that day.
Oh yeah, there's something. Yeah. What is that?
But that's at I think 11 a.m.
Is that the original Act Up?
It's the 25th anniversary, and they're demanding universal health care, I think, or nationalized health care to celebrate.
Wow.
But I don't know which will be bigger.
Yeah.
No.
If they're at the same time, I guess you want to go to the
Act
bigger
Up's
one.
Wednesday too.
Yeah.
Oh shit! Yeah, that's going to be big. They're trying to get a financial
it's
tax
Wednesday.
on
Yeah.
Wall Street to use for healthcare, and
Right.
Nice.
so they're actually marching to Wall Street.
They are.
And it's
Okay.
supposed to be really big too. It's like, would you say 25th year anniversary?
It's the 25th anniversary.
So Wednesday sounds like it's going to be a lot of actions on Wednesday. So might as well shoot for Wednesday.
Shoot for Wednesday.
Anyone shoot for Wednesday?
Yes.
Okay. I'll be there.
Where?
I guess we're gonna. Well, actually, that leads us to our next agenda item, which is internal communication.
Okay, I'll make it simple. Okay, I come up with this in various working groups to touch it, but let me deal with a simple aspect. Last Sunday I was here, and another member of this working group was not here. I think his name was Hermas.
Oh yes.
He was here, and the rest, and no one else was here. I had an inkling that we did whatever we did the day before at the GA, whatever. But I showed up anyway. He did not even know about it. And besides, I think his email address on whatever internal emails went was probably wrong. Okay. We should have, okay, an internal listserv, at least for handling logistical issues, like when we meet, or and what we do, or certain drafts of certain things that we will be discussing in advance. And it should be limited to people who showed up at meetings, not to the general public, just to be able to. I understand there was one, people were unhappy with it because they were swamped. There are ways of controlling it, and that's what I think we should have.
Well, last week you're right. We were at the Occupy Town Square event, which was on the Saturday. But basically, we've been talking. I mean, there's
Whole city.
yeah, the All City GA exactly. But we now have. It's not a Google group. I don't think it's technically a listserv, but it's just a large. It's just an email. It's just a group email, right?
Yes, a group. It's less convenient than having a listserv, okay? And we can have 10 or 15 or 20 people on it and the qualification that you are participating in those meetings. Either you've been here once or you've been here more than once, but at least, like Hermes, for instance, does belong.
Yeah.
I'm here every second meeting or two, but I'm part, but I should know also. So I think we should have it. I'm willing to set it up if we all agree and see to it that it does not get out of hand.
If you want to set it up, set it up.
Yes.
I would second that.
By all means. I mean,
Okay.
just-
So,
Should we open
questions
Saturday?
on
Question.
setting up a listserv.
Mike, oh, it's a concern.
Okay. So questions.
Sure.
Okay. Concerns.
Would be that we exclude anybody who isn't on the listserv from knowing where we are and preventing them from finding us and joining us.
That was one problem that I wouldn't. As a matter of fact, on NYCGA, we were scheduled to be here at 3 o'clock. NYCGA should exist. People should post to it. People should discuss it, and we should be responsible in informing people and using it.
Okay. Normally, at least my experience has been that the NYCGA, that's been accurate. That especially with regards to us, that the information that's put on there when we're meeting and where has been accurate. This one time, Sam dropped the ball, so it's. I don't think it warrants a grand revamping just because one day Sam forgot to update the. Do you know what I'm saying?
If that was the only problem, I would say handle NYCGA better, and that's it. Let me give you an example. Somebody distributed a 3-page analysis of various voting systems, okay? And I missed the meeting at which it was. I wanted to raise 2 critiques of the thing, or even to tell people that I will not be at the next meeting, okay? And can they schedule it for here he is.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so forth. Has there been such a form of the 10 or so who are here? It would be a convenient place to do it. And if we limit only to people who participate, okay, and we control it from not having off-topic subjects, please. If you have something to say that it's not direct business, NYCGA is open, post there, and it's free.
Okay.
But
Any other concerns? So, are you volunteering to set it up?
yes.
Okay. Set it up.
I will. Almost everything is changeable, and a few. Whatever I will decide that's not changeable will be relatively non-controversial.
Okay. Well, here's the list. It's going around.
Well, does everyone want to be on the list?
Okay.
Everybody here will be put on it, plus Sam, plus Jason, and I don't know who else.
That's a good start. Okay, last agenda item is from Cecilia, looking forward.
Oh, I don't. That's it. I just want to have a discussion. I don't have a suggestion. Should I come up with a proposal and bring it to the next meeting?
All right, we could change it to it's just no longer an action item, it's a discussion question. What's the question?
Just what are we planning beyond the voting experiment? I'm sorry. Should I not be talking about this now?
No? Yeah, this was your agenda item.
All right, I'm withdrawing it because I have to give it more thought. I have to give it more thought. I'm sorry.
That's fair enough.
And I was ready for it.
I was actually, well, to respond to that, I think, the...
It was more of a question than a sorry.
It's a good question. I mean,
Let me follow from that. Let me raise a question.
I think maybe somebody else
Sounds
should
like
go.
you talk before. I talk too much. I talk too much.
You think this is a good idea?
So the purpose of the experiment is to affect change, right? To have at least locally vote differently, right? So I
Right.
think so. It's not just an academic endeavor, right?
No, I know.
Just
Yeah.
collect the data and then publishing it.
Right.
Right. So moving forward, it should actually have an effect on the way we vote, at least locally here in New York. So that's, if we don't push for that, then I think it is pointless.
Right, but I guess I don't have a clear idea of what that is. Like, what do we do? That's kind of what
How do we go?
my question was, is like, once we have all of this, what are we going to do with it?
Actually, I think this is actually could be very long term because I was reading up on some other experiments. Really well funded. There have been some really well funded experiments on voting technology in South America, and they did. They weren't testing methods. They were testing how the machines, how different machines bias the outcome in one way or the other. So they had, I think, 4 different types of machines, and they did it on election day and stationed it in they were able to collect like 40,000 some odd people over the course of one day. That's how many machines and how many resources they had. But it brought up the idea of and I was thinking well, what if we had, what if resources were not an issue? What could we do, right? So if we had, say, one thing we could, if we work out kind of, whatever kind of little blips and in the program exist, and however it's laid out over the next few months, on election day, if we had, say, 2 of these or 3 of these, or let's say 4 iPads or something, if some generous angel came down and gave us a blank check and we suddenly bought 5 iPads or whatever machines, something we could do is on election day is, if someone wanted to do it, is to station people outside polling booths in a specific district, right, and run this experiment on election day outside whatever, where there's going to be a lot of people who are, we're basically doing exit polling of these things, and then we would actually be able to compare our data not only to our own stuff, but to the actual election returns in that district, and even to the polling place itself, right? In this polling place, you would know, because that's all public information. This many people voted, and this many of them voted this way, and that many of them voted that way. And we can say, well, of those people, we talked to this X many of them, and they voted differently in other methods or something, and we could turn it into
That would be so cool.
we could turn it into a big stunt
Yeah.
of some sort or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. So that might be something we could work toward.
I would love that.
Uh,
Your results are wrong.
Does anyone else want to? I'm sorry. Does anyone else want to
Stack.
speak?
Yes. Okay. We'll do progressive stack.
I'll do stack.
no,
yeah.
okay, fine, good. That's
Someone other than Itzhak.
Oh, sorry.
No, exactly. I should be put on the bottom of every progressive stack.
Okay, so I'm just wondering, are there other groups that have done anything related to this kind of experiment before? Are there?
In general?
Yeah.
Oh, I think so. Yeah, but none that have compared. Often it's just plurality versus one, because often the groups that are doing the studies are they actually already favor this method, so they advocate, let's say people who are really into IRV, they'll do studies of IRV or ranked choice versus plurality. And people who are into approval, they'll test approval versus plurality. So I think ours is different in the fact that it's testing multiple methods. But there are studies that have been done.
It's like industry studies versus independent studies on
It
the
just
same
seems like
topic.
there's got to be some think tank or not-for-profit that might help. I mean, I don't know, maybe not. But I mean, if it's in line with something that they'd be interested in anyway, there could be a chance for funding. At the very least,
true.
a few iPads.
That's true. Yeah, well, there are a couple
I
of
don't
them
know
off the
how
top
to
of my head.
research that.
Well, a couple of them off the top of my head. One is, there's Fair Vote, which you might be familiar with. They do some good work, but they're strong proponents of instant runoff. They're in the instant runoff camp in the alternative voting method people. Then there's the Center for Election Science, but they're in the approval voting camp. And they don't get along well, these two groups of people.
Do you want to see if you can find out some information on researching possible funding for?
Well, I mean, I'll do a little bit of research so we can see who else has been working in this field.
Yeah.
But I mean, it just seems or also with statistical help or things like that. It just seems like, I mean, if we're just operating here like nobody has done anything related to this before, it just seems like it might be a wasted opportunity. So I'm sure there are other people who are like very frantically upset by this issue as well in the world.
There are. It's true. But the thing is, I would respond that like a lot of those people, like they are already decidedly for one or the other
Well,
of the alternative methods.
with you're gathering data here, and you talk about it's no good to gather data if you're not going to create some change at the other end of it, which I agree. Well, the data is going to show something. I mean, I don't know what the existing hypothesis is, but it's either going to validate it or invalidate it. And once it does, you're going to be in a camp, or should be in a camp. I mean, that, hey, this is what works best. And then you, maybe at that point, and then after this stunt at the polling place, you'll have a lot of gathered data. You'll have maybe a little bit of exposure. You'll be in a prime position to align yourself with somebody who maybe does have funds, to come in behind you and help push for some of the change.
Two things. We should discuss whether, in addition to examining voting systems, our main working group here, not our subgroups, had any other purpose. And among all the other purposes that are being discussed is voter suppression. So we should, if somebody has to address that issue. We've been working hard on what we've been doing. Next question. We have not thought too carefully what we are going to do with this thing, because it's been a lot of fun, and I like to play that game as well as anybody else, even more so. And one thing that I, for instance, would like to do, it would cost more and so forth. Once a person does all those votes, and I really give them the choices, I'll give them the printout. Here is how you voted, okay? And this is, if you were the only voter, those would be the results, okay? Those would be the results, okay? Because I do not believe that we can compete in the sophistication with a lot of the analytical stuff, as you mentioned, that is necessary. So let's think what can we do on a less ambitious level. One more thing that I thought we may consider. On November general election, we should try and do this, at least at one place and maybe more, just to get our feet wet. And I would probably try to go to a place that's very, very much unlike OWS to get. I mean, I go somewhere in Staten Island or somewhere for that.
Yeah, Staten Island should be
Is there
opposite, OWS opposite.
Yeah, I can do it in Queens also.
Does anyone know if there's when the New York primary, when primary day
The
is?
primary are in June. There will be a primary.
So maybe we could even do something on primary day.
Yeah,
We could,
yeah, they do it on primary day.
might be interesting.
Except,
Stick it to the Democrats.
except we have to find out
Although it's mostly
what
Republican.
kind of people will show up. If we'd like to go to a place where there is a Republican primary and a Democratic primary that are really contested, so we'll have a good mix of Republicans and Democrats at least.
Yeah.
And it'd give you a good trial run for the November election.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. So we can.
Wait a minute, is there any,
of course. There's going to be a presidential primary.
we haven't had one yet.
No, it's irrelevant. Obama will win the
No, I
Democrat.
understand that.
Romney will win the Republican.
Why
you
are we
know.
going to have a primary in New York when we haven't had a primary anywhere else?
We always did.
Yeah, they had one in 08.
No, I understand that, but we haven't had a Democratic primary yet. We've only had Republican primaries.
No, the primaries are on the same day.
Voting.
Really?
across in the other
They're
states
just
across
not
the
talking
country?
about it? Is that it?
Or like
Have I missed it?
the primaries where there's, I'm trying to think, was what, so 4 years ago it would have been? You're talking about the presidential?
Yeah.
You're talking about this year?
I'm sorry.
There were
am I-
Obama and Clinton running
happened
against each
together at the
other.
same
Are you talking
time.
about this year?
Yeah, there's Hillary and Obama.
Yeah.
It's just like I remember talking
There's
to
no
my
real
friends.
there's
people at
no
different-
there's no
For the sitting or for the incumbent, there's not, or what do you call the guy?
well, yeah, the incumbent.
Yeah.
Well, no
There's
one's
no challenger, so
there.
what's
Actually,
the,
there are challengers.
There are real challengers. They're
Okay.
really contested.
but not in the Democratic. Is
Of
there
course.
in the on the Democratic?
Actually, who's challenging him?
So
you know?
where are the primaries? Why aren't we?
They've
hearing
been
about them?
happening on the same day as the Republican primaries.
Yeah, they happen the same day.
They're going to be.
God, I'm
Okay.
so.
Okay.
Alrighty.
But you know, it may be the case that there's no one got ballot access in that state to challenge Obama, say. So I don't know. It's hard.
Okay.
Well, in that case, we already had it because we're part of Super Tuesday, and that happened.
No, we were not.
Well, we always were before.
Well,
This year we were not part of Super Tuesday.
Yeah, I thought it was June. I thought it was June for some reason.
All right, don't listen to me.
No,
I'm
the
sorry.
point
Don't-
is,
I'm
forget about
confusing the matter.
forget about maybe we will. There will be congressional primaries. Okay.
Okay.
Congressional primaries in June. Okay.
Yes.
And in some, and I can tell you, for instance, in the 7th in Brooklyn, there is a group called Rock the Vote. You may have heard of them.
Yes, I know that.
And we may even go there where Nida Velasquez is being challenged by people who are close to OWS. I do not expect real contested Republican primaries in most of those places.
I think I have this thing in here too.
Yeah, but in Charlie Rangel's district, there are two real challenges. Adolphus Towns is not running, and there are two people who are competing in a real Democratic primary. So I can tell you, we have to find out which is most appropriate.
Yeah.
This Wednesday, there's going to be a primary for, I'm not sure, for something, I think for assembly, for state assembly,
is that too soon? That's too soon.
this Wednesday.
No, for us. Right?
Are we
In
still trying to
many
decide where
places,
we're going to go?
I don't know. That's,
and most, there are districts where it is being contested. Forget it.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. So, good. So the question actually was looking forward beyond the experiment, and now we're actually just, I derailed that by saying actually we can just extend the experiment. But you actually withdrew, so I don't know. So actually, technically, we're done with our agenda. So these are things that so with back to the, I guess we'll bring it back to the voting experiment. So these are things we can, these are dates that we should have in our mind. I guess we can have a trial run in June, and then maybe we can talk about this in greater detail since we just kind of only touched on it, but actually preparing something for election day and maybe creating some kind of media stunt out of it at the same time.
Sure.
That could be pretty fun.
Yeah.
All right, excellent. So, short recap. We talked about changing the putting some demographic questions at the end of the voting experiment. Also, putting so that we have a series of maybe about 7 potential demographic questions, and also changing the program such that it would. So that every person would do would participate in all 4 methodologies, and then the question is, okay, but is that randomized, or do we keep it, with everyone does plurality first, and then the remaining 3 are randomized? And there seemed to be support on both sides of that issue, although I think there might have been more vocal support for randomizing everything. We could talk about that in greater detail at a future meeting to actually decide that and then Stefan. And this is basically when we're discussing this question, we were discussing the number of hours of work that Stefan will eventually have to put into to doing it if he volunteers to do that again. And then we talked about
Yes.
internal communication, Wednesday events, the Wednesday events, ACT UP, and student debt.
I have a question about that. How are we going to communicate where we're meeting and what time and all of that stuff for Wednesday? Are we going to have
What was our next
Sure.
point?
Our group is going to exist within 24 hours unless, and almost all of us are going to be on it.
Okay.
And why don't we decide to meet next Sunday over here at 3 o'clock? Why are we decide?
We're talking about meeting Wednesday to conduct our experiment.
We're going to do two ways. The listserv will exist within hours, okay? Everybody who signed up here and everybody who was on our internal, copies thing will be invited, okay? I have the power to add people.
The power,
No, the power, the authority.
the authority.
Yes, the facility, the option to add people without their consent. I don't like to do that. Okay, so you're all going to get invitations, and you're all going to get an email. Okay, fine.
Okay. So that's our next wrapping up further. Last agenda point was ITSAC is going to set up the listserv, and that will be done within hours. And we'll all get invitations to join that if we so desire, and then we can decide. We can talk over that to decide when we are actually going to meet with one another on Wednesday, and obviously we can also coordinate that at the last second if necessary via text and phone. Any last announcements or questions?
But can't we tentatively decide now when to meet and then change it?
Wednesday. That's 10th.
Wednesday. If we are going to meet.
We have to check to see what time the what was it called, the
1T?
The 1T event, because we're sort of planning our thing around that.
Yeah,
And
ACT UP and
we're not
1T.
sure of the
When and where that
details.
is.
Yeah.
So, but tentatively, we're going to meet up probably around the ACT UP and or 1T student debt actions. Easy enough.
When is this meeting?
Right. Wednesday night.
Wednesday, 7 to 9,
7 to 9 here.
here.
Here. Yeah. That was born
Yes.
from this group.
This is a sub-working group. of this working
It's a working group.
Because that's going
Okay.
to speak only to.
No, it's a sub-working
It's a
group.
sub-working group, but it's a working group.
Okay.
No, it's a
It's
sub-working
separated
group.
but not divorced. We decided to have two separate beds.
Okay. Sleeping on the couch for a
Yeah,
while.
but they're working, get money out of politics.
Right.
And we're working on the electoral
Tomorrow night, which is, I don't think it's been finalized yet specifically about
So all these companies you took it out from ALEC?
if you're interested in.
No, that flag was generated by
It's sort of a breakout group.
Adbusters. That's an Adbusters. That's an Adbusters
We're having
flag,
a strategy issue.
and we use that graphic
Okay,
to
before Wednesday?
put our
It's
stuff
going
on
to be
it.
either tomorrow night or.
Most of them are from ALEC.
There's a lot more, but yeah,
Wednesday, which is that's
yeah,
gonna
that's some.
Yeah.
There's a lot.
get more involved in it.
Announcements?
What kind of question?
Okay.
Just trying to know what are the underlying principles that are behind our orientation in this way. How,
In what?
our orientation in this way to choose new way of voting. Did we do any construction, any elaboration, theoretical elaboration to come out to this result, or just choose it?
You mean when we're actually? Well, one second. I'll answer that 1 second. So, final aspect of the meeting is: are there any final announcements? No one wants to make? Okay, so if that's it, then I guess we're
wrapped.
wrapped. Thanks for coming. I forgot all your name. Christina. Alma.
Yeah.
Okay. You?
Sean.
Sean. Nice to meet you. Thank you all for
I
coming
wish I
down.
could transfer this like efficiency and organization to like other working groups somehow.
Wow. Unbelievable. We feel like we're not
Yes.
as
Spoken
efficient.
like a true newcomer.
There are not as many of us. Many of us have been working together.
Wait till
For
Sam
a
shows
long
up.
time.
Wait until Sam shows up.